So what the collective are saying today is, greetings, friends. We're happy to have this time to speak with you today. And we see that there is much panic in certain parts of the world, particularly regarding very close or questionable election results in the United States and the still uncontrolled fires in parts of California, among other issues. And we wish to assure you, you are not alone in this, and that you have not been abandoned, and that we are working through numerous Lightworkers to assist in establishing higher standards and forms of justice for your election system, as well as to save lives, homes, and forest areas in California and elsewhere. You are in the midst of a powerful change all around your planet that tends to greatly threaten the old power structure, which is not used to being questioned in any concrete way. It also sees its grip on human life loosening by the minute, and this creates a panic that then pushes them to create events that throw everyday life into different forms of chaos. We ask that you not give way to fear, that you trust in the higher sense that all is well, ever has been and will be, and that you will find ways to rebuild lives and to heal those parts of the natural world now being harmed. In fact, do not even see it as harm. View it as an alchemical shift from one vibration to a much higher one. Sometimes that can mean a removal of the old. It can mean entering a kind of void after which a new form of living is created. Do not feel that you are alone in these situations, or that no one from the higher realms is assisting you in holding on to health care, keeping the environment healthy, assisting individuals as they lose seemingly everything. We are with you. You have only to call upon us for higher levels of assistance in all ways, in all times, including the encouragement to keep going and to keep building higher forms of living and higher forms of experiencing life. Namaste, dear ones. You are never alone. Okay, so our guests today are authors and filmmakers Connie Baxter Marlowe and Andrew Cameron Bailey. And Connie Baxter Marlowe grew up in Maine, the descendant of Mayflower Pilgrims, visionary philanthropists, and politicians. She graduated from UC Berkeley with an honors degree in economics. And following an epiphany in the late 80s, Connie has developed a unique and inspiring worldview, distilled from several decades of interacting with visionary Native American elders in North America and Mexico. She now creates forums for these elders so they can share their understanding of the nature of the universe. Connie's been speaking at colleges, universities, high schools, conferences for more than 15 years, proposing paradigm-shifting solutions. These include her new economic theory, a radical take on the events of September 11th, the true nature of the human spirit, the inevitability of peace on earth, what a beautiful idea, the role of Henry David Thoreau in the evolution of democracy, and the spiritual destiny of America. Connie was given the name Eagle Woman in a vision and instructed to, quote, fly very high and report back all that you see. The mother of 3 grown children, she joyfully shares her extraordinary vision with willing ears. And author, photographer, and filmmaker Andrew Cameron Bailey was born in England and grew up in Durban, South Africa, where he studied the arts, sciences, and anthropology, and became a college lecturer in math and chemistry. In 1969, he set sail for Santa Cruz, California, where he studied with major players in the consciousness revolution and began to experience his vision of the destiny of humanity. Andrew embarked on the Sufi path in 1974. He married a South African jazz dancer and raised 5 children amid African dance and drumming in New York. He spent the 80s and 90s in New York studying African music, native wisdom, world religions, yoga, and Sufism, developing his understanding of the nature of reality. So welcome, Connie and Andrew. It's great to have you here.
Well, we are thrilled to be here, and we're just so thrilled with that opening transmission from your higher realms, our higher realms, because we couldn't agree more with every word they said, and we're just happy to have that confirmation. And you, Andrew?
Yeah, it's an honor and a privilege to be here. Hello.
Oh, thank you so much. We're really thrilled you're here, and I I'm always amazed how whatever's going on in the world, these messages that come from this lovely group who just call themselves the collective, and they call them that because they say, for we speak as one, which is a beautiful unity statement right there. But they're always able to raise our outlook and to a higher level. It's a beautiful gift. So thank you for noticing that. And I just want to talk a bit about your book, The Trust Frequency, which is such a great title. Trust is very hard, I find, for modern people. We live in our minds question everything. We're still in this frequency or this attitude of, I have to take care of myself. We're still survival based. And you define the trust frequency as an elevated state of being where our soul's destiny awaits us, holding more abundance, balance, freedom, and joy than we can imagine. And it's where the true nature of the universe is experienced, and it's available to anyone, anywhere, anytime. You then go on to explain what you believe to be the true nature of the universe, which is actually very positive. It's very different from what traditional scientific theory has taught us. Can you, either or both of you, explain why you feel we live in a loving universe? Because science has taught us it's just this cold, mechanistic apparatus, but you view it as a universe that responds to our intentions, our thoughts and feelings all the time.
Well, exactly. We and your higher guides referred to it as well. If you remember, they said trust the process. And what they're alluding to is the fact that it is a conscious, loving universe. It is all leading to a higher place. That's a given for us. So in this construct that we've put together in the Trust Frequency book, it's called The Trust Frequency 10 Assumptions for a New Paradigm. We feel that humanity's out of balance because we don't understand how the universe works. That, in fact, it's not a cold, mechanical universe. That it is, in fact, a conscious, loving, abundant universe. Do you have something you'd like to say, Andrew?
Certainly. You said, for example, that science, and it's true, I'm the science guy, and I was raised to believe in the Newtonian, Descartesian, mechanistic vision of the way the universe is.
Sure.
However, contemporary science is changing radically and rapidly into a much, much broader understanding as consciousness is finally coming to be acknowledged by science. So that's actually changing. I'm currently reading the latest book by Ervin Laszlo, who is one of the greatest scientists of the last 100 years. And the picture that's painted is supported by the work of David Bohm, for example, the quantum physicist, and many others, and many both spiritual and pure science thinkers. We live clearly in an integrated living universe, and that is science speaking. Now, love is a word that science seems reluctant to approach. It's just that's, I think, thought of as the realm of religion or spirituality or metaphysics or something.
Yeah.
They'll get there. So we bring in the loving aspect because, in fact, my favorite metaphor is, for example, a few months before I was born, where was I? I was in the womb of my loving mother. I was utterly and totally protected. I was within this spherical form that provided all of my needs up until the time of my birth. And that continues. We all are contained within a matrix, a mother, the great mother. And that, I think that metaphor applies. We are so loved by our mother, our physical mother as humans, and we are so loved by the universe, the Gaia mothering aspect of universe. Does that make any sense?
Oh, absolutely. But what you're doing there is opening to the door to ideas about divine the divine feminine. And both science and religion have cut that out for hundreds and hundreds of years and tried to retrain and assimilate those cultures which insisted on an equality between the divine feminine and divine masculine in terms of how we think and how we feel about life. And if you're going to bring love into things, you're bringing in warmth and nurturing and reassurance and all the things we associate with the maternal. And that's the revolutionary part of this idea. And you're also talking about in this book, the trust frequency. The science and religion are really not separate, as you're saying, except that we've got these fragmented left brain dominated minds. And you say that if the founders of world religions are correct, as they teach God is love, and if God is identical with the quantum field, as science explains it now, and if the quantum field is the entire universe, then logically we're led to the idea that universe is love. And then I know that people might hear that and they say, yeah, that's nice, but meanwhile, we're on this fragmented earth where there's so much violence. How does that blend with the idea of a loving universe, except for the fact that we're a free will planet? Why haven't organized religions emphasized love over religious law if God is love? And if that means that the universe is love? What's their thinking there, do you think?
Well, we can't speak for the religions, but we'll speak for our construct. We say that we actually resolve that paradox because we say that absolutely what you've said is that God is love and God is everything, the unified field, and everything is love. Well, if you take that as absolutely true, okay, then we're saying that these 10 assumptions that we're bringing, you have to take as absolutely true, and it changes everything. Mm-hmm. And the reason that we see things as not love, you see, we resolve the paradox with our second assumption. Our first assumption is there is only love, absolutely. The second assumption is that this love, we don't understand the nature of this love. The nature of this love is unconditional, but we don't understand the nature of unconditional love. Unconditional love means it loves us so much that it gives us everything we ask for. Now, the question is, what are our requests? We don't understand what our requests are to that conscious, loving universe. So that's our assumption number 3, and that is that we create our reality by the power of our consciousness. Okay? Then, assumption number 4 is, what is our consciousness? Our consciousness, we have these 7 words that begin with A that we call the 7 A's of consciousness. And I can tell you those in just one sentence because we have a lot to discuss here, but these 7 A's of consciousness, which we can check on a daily basis, this is a little toolkit in one sentence that helps us understand what our requests are to the loving universe, what creates our frequency, our vibratory level. See, it's really physics.
Yes.
It's just plain vibration. It's energy and it's vibration. There's no judgment. It's total choice. It's total free will. We have total control over our reality given free will and given the loving nature of the universe and the physics of it all, the vibratory aspect of it. The different frequencies have different laws. Okay? So we're stuck in a low frequency because our conditioned minds have said to ourselves, this is the only game in town. Well, it's not the only game in town. This is a scarcity-based paradigm. It's a low frequency. It's a result of fear energy that's been on this planet for millennia. Yes. And the planet is actually moving into a higher frequency of where we can move into total trust, which your entities are speaking about. So we're giving tools to get to that place the entities are speaking about. And these 7 A's, I'll say it in one sentence, okay? With expanded awareness and accurate assumptions, we choose our attitude, consciously direct our attention, align with our highest inner knowing, take committed action, and allow the loving universe to manifest beyond our wildest dreams. You see, we can't fathom what is in that higher frequency, because it's beyond the confines of our conditioned reality, our conditioned beliefs. And that's why we say we have to shift our core assumptions about the nature of the universe, so we understand that we are loved, and that we understand, so we can know that we're communicating with these 7 A's to this conscious, loving universe. Do you have anything you'd like to add, Andrew?
No, let's go on.
Okay. He's ready. I've said it just right, and he said, let's go on to your thoughts on the matter.
Well, that's excellent. Of course, by 7 A's, you mean these 7 assumptions. And you comment early on in the book that our beliefs are assumptions about the universe, such as, for instance, then this is my thought, that we might pray, but maybe there's nobody listening, or there's somebody listening, but they might not care. Or life is hard, and we always have to struggle is another assumption. Take care of yourself, because there's nobody else to do that is another assumption. And you talk about these faulty fear-based assumptions that most people tend to live by because we've been trained to live that way. But they stop us from seeing our true nature, including how powerful we are. Once we tap into these new ideas, these beautiful ideas that you call your assumptions. So what do you feel are the fear-based assumptions that have thrown us off the path of joy and fulfillment, and that have kept the world in such a state of imbalance for eons? What are we doing wrong in our everyday thinking, do you feel?
Well, the subtitle of the book so the title is The Trust Frequency. The subtitle is 10 Assumptions for a New Paradigm. And a paradigm is simply a set of assumptions, an agreed upon consensus reality. An assumption is a belief that we haven't questioned, an unquestioned belief or opinion.
Right.
So we have inherited, as little children, we inherited this entire belief system that came from our forebears, from our parents, from our grandparents, from our teachers, ministers, priests, rabbis, etc., from school, from television, from our teachers, our buddies, whoever. And these fundamental assumptions that underlie every culture. Now, here in America, we have one set of assumptions. In Europe, they might be slightly different, but still basically the same. If we were Australian Aborigines, they'd be pretty different. If we were Congolese Pygmies, they would be pretty different yet again. In other words, depending on the culture that we're a part of, we will have a collective reality or a consensus opinion, an actual paradigm, which is, as I said, a set of assumptions. The assumptions that we are currently operating on go back thousands of years and hundreds of generations, and they are predominantly fear-based, such things as the neighbors are dangerous, there's not enough, the illusion of separation, of scarcity, the dominance of time. Go to native cultures, they have a different take on time. We are so driven by time and the apparent lack of time, on and on and on. And so what our work has to do with is the examination of previously unexamined beliefs and assumptions. It's about worldview, or about a consensus reality that just actually changes everything. The minute you accomplish the act of examining your assumptions and making a conscious choice, as opposed to the unconscious one that we made as little children, things change radically. The circumstances can be exactly the same, and we have a different attitude to that circumstance. It really helps. It's very liberating. And the other little tagline on the cover of the book, as you may have noticed, is the high road to happiness. It actually makes it a lot easier to be happy rather than miserable, because if we're stuck with the assumptions that most of society is operating on, we're in trouble. Life is pretty gloomy and pretty scary. And it's time for an upgrade to our operating system.
Absolutely it is.
You okay with that?
Absolutely. I don't think too many people would argue with that. And what's interesting about the trust frequency, about halfway through, I think it just must contain beautiful higher energies, because about halfway through I just got this feeling of the reality of this being a loving universe, that's not just an idea, but I really began to experience it in a way I wasn't expecting. It was really a beautiful moment. And, part of that is that the book presents a way of seeing the world that isn't stuck in this good, bad, light, dark duality. And it explains how we can demonstrate our experience of unity out into the world just by shifting our own consciousness. My question is, how do you explain non-duality and unity to people when our neural pathways, our thought processes are set in such a way we literally can't seem to think in non-dualistic ways? We can't seem to stop judging, stop categorizing. How do we break out of that in our day-to-day lives? Is there a key to escaping that sort of mental trap that we're all raised to continue with?
Well, that's a very good question. I think, for one thing, the fact that everything is collapsing, everything that we thought we could trust and that we thought was good, we're discovering is going away. And it's leaving us dependent upon our intuition, our trust that it's all going to work out, and our experience that ultimately a disease or an experience ultimately leads to a higher place. We're starting to experience it and realize it from the collapse of what we thought was real. Like, the whole thing with this country that you mentioned, or the political systems collapsing and everyone going into the shadow,
Yeah.
and everything we thought was good and right not working because it wasn't good and right. And there's a much higher place to go, and it's throwing us onto ourselves, onto our deepest true selves, as opposed to learned behaviors. Like Andrew said, the neighbors are dangerous. Okay, all of a sudden, if you're part of a fire or you're part of a collapsing situation, man, your neighbors all of a sudden are your best friends.
Yeah.
And so
Absolutely.
it's just forcing us to go through those prejudices, those fears, all the shadow that we're seeing on the table. And loss of money. We don't have money, that security anymore, and we just have to know that there is a conscious, loving universe. Get ourselves into that frequency where we know we are cared for, and we create our own reality. It takes some somebody actually saying, "Hey, I've got to shift what I think and how I think." It has to be a crack in the awareness to let something else in, and usually a crisis is that crack that allows us and forces us into exploration.
That is absolutely beautiful. So we can stop making change and even crisis our enemy, because that's this beautiful moment of opportunity, actually. And I'm not sure if I just read that in one of your writings or elsewhere, but what is it, the Chinese, depending on the context, the Chinese symbol for crisis can also be read as opportunity. So I think that's sort of how you're looking at it. Really beautiful.
Right.
Yeah. So, Andrew, you grew up...
And people...
Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's all right. Go on.
Well, I was just going to ask Andrew, because he grew up near the Zulu tribe. He came to know the Bushmen of the Kalahari, learned a great deal from them. And Connie, you've studied with Native American shamans for decades, which just is so fascinating for me. It's one of the reasons I moved out west. And you've both studied the indigenous peoples of the world, the Australian Aborigines, whom you mentioned, the native North and South American nations, such as the Hopi, the Lakota, the Maya, the Toltec, others. So what would the wisdom teachings of any of these cultures say about how we can break out of the good-bad duality paradigm and start viewing each other in terms of unity instead of constantly separating into all these separate camps?
Well, interesting that you mentioned the Zulu tribe. I actually grew up in Zulu land, which is a very beautiful part of Southeast Africa. And the Zulus are absolutely lovely people. However, they're also exceedingly violent, and it's interesting because they are the descendants of Shaka Zulu, who actually founded the Zulu Empire, which is a prime example of the dominator culture. It's not just a white thing or a European thing. We've had these dominator cultures throughout history, and one of them, if you read The Rise and Fall of the Zulu Empire, you kind of need a strong stomach to read that. It's pretty scary. So I've had real trouble finding an uplifting or a wisdom-based message from those people, despite the fact that they're absolutely sweet. They also have a dangerous side to them, let me put it that way. On the other hand, the Bushmen of the Kalahari, and I suspect that I have not been to Australia, and that's very much on my bucket list, to spend time with the Aborigines. The Bushmen, however, even though we don't have a language in common, so it's not a mental left brain communication, something one gains from being with them. There's something that's just about acceptance. Their history is harrowing. They've really, really been put through it. And nevertheless, they just continue to have this beautiful, all-encompassing acceptance. I took Connie there back when we first met, in 2004. And she just said, I've never been so loved on in my life. I mean, these people are actually physically hugging and holding and touching and adoring you. It's quite amazing. And there's something there for humanity. I truly believe that the Bushmen of the Kalahari, who happen to be the world's oldest people, they have genetically the oldest DNA of any living, existing human community. And there's something about their way that's it's never been expressed in anything mystical. It's not something you have to study. It's something you have to experience. They have a phenomenon they do that we call the Trance Dance, where they simply dance. They do this endless dance and get into this altered state, and there's no drugs or ingested substances involved. And they literally leave their bodies and journey up into the sky, and they actually go to God's house, and they sit down with the Creator and tell the Creator what's going on back in the community. If there are conflicts or illnesses or problems, and they come back down and proceed to heal the members of their community once they have returned from God's house. It's a pretty amazing reality, isn't it? Isn't that different from anything you've ever heard? Yeah, exactly. So they really have something. Now, Connie has spent an awful lot of time with Native American elders, and I think she will have something to say on this subject. But it's in the deepest, oldest essence of the indigenous people, and I believe we are all indigenous, and we have indigenous roots ourselves that we are capable of going back and connecting into. Okay, Connie?
Wonderful.
Yeah, and see, for me, the dominant energy on the planet being fear over the last millennia that I mentioned influenced everyone, regardless of core assumptions, regardless of cosmology and belief systems. I believe because every culture has a shadow. Every culture has light. We can't demonize one culture over another or put another one on a pedestal over another, because we're each carrying a piece of the puzzle for the future, with a synthesis of all of our pieces. And this is in prophecy, that we're going to come together and bring the light of all cultures and all peoples together to create something that's never been on the planet before. That's my understanding and my vision and my knowing. And it's starting to happen. We were just at the Parliament of the World's Religions in Toronto, and the concept of unity consciousness, that we are one, was the dominant theme of this gathering of 7,000 people and cultures from all over the world. And so we're coming to which quantum science is actually proving, that we are one consciousness. We are one, and that in the indigenous knowing, they have contact with that and understand that. And but their behavior hasn't reflected that because the sphere energy on the planet has affected them as well. They're maybe the Bushmen of the Kalahari, the Aborigines, the Hopi. There are certain cultures, the Pueblo people. There are certain cultures that are peaceful people that have really never gone to war. But generally speaking, the indigenous peoples of the world have been very warlike in their past, horrifically so, including the Native Americans. And it's important that we all recognize our shadow and that we choose now to go forward into the light, into our hearts together. And so I would say that the indigenous people have been in their cosmology, and that's what we're bringing forth in the book, is that they're carrying clues to the true nature of the universe, to our true nature, to the heart of humanity, the heart of creation, the beauty and the love that sits there. They don't use the word love, but I saw that from being with the indigenous elders that I was with over 20 years and with the people I was with, that in their way of life is a fundamental understanding that everything has a purpose. If everything has a purpose, then it's all, that aligns with, it's all love. It all has a purpose. It's all leading somewhere. And that animals come into our path to teach us something when we need a lesson. How does that animal get there? Well, it's energy, it's love, because we are supported and loved. And circumstance, their thing is read the signs. Well, if you, in your life, read the signs of life, what the universe is talking to you and speaking to you and telling you from the behavior of others, from major circumstance in your life that you think you want to go one place and circumstance says, oh no, sorry, you're going the other way. We say circumstance loves us more than we do. We have to understand that everything in our life happens for us, not to us. Okay, that's a key shift.
Yes.
So that we can learn and grow. So we can learn and grow on our journey to wholeness. Okay, so that's for us. The gift of the indigenous peoples is this connection to what we consider to be the true nature of the universe, the conscious, loving, abundant universe. In the indigenous way, you don't hoard and save. This whole thing of saving and hoarding and power and control over others because you have more than they do, that's all fear-based. And in the indigenous way, you give it away. Give away is the essence of abundance. You give it away because there's more there. But if you're in a scarcity paradigm, scarcity frequency, you're creating more scarcity with your thinking. See, these 7 A's of consciousness, how we think, what our assumptions are, create our reality. The universe has to reflect what we think, and it's physics. It's a frequency thing. So,
excellent.
Anyway, that's the answer to that.
Wonderful. Thank you. Beautifully put. I just want to say, if anyone's just joined us, you're listening to the Empowered Lightwork on lnmradionetwork.com Studio B. I'm Caroline Oceana Ryan, and we're speaking today with authors and filmmakers Connie, Baxter, Marlowe, and Andrew Cameron Bailey. They wrote the book The Trust Frequency and also produced the film In Search of the Future, which we'll talk about in a moment. But, in the book, there's this beautiful, powerful quote from Ken Carey from his book, Return of the Bird Tribes, which is quite an amazing book. And he tells us, you are not your present structures of understanding. You inhabit a multidimensional reality far beyond any structure of thought that could ever be created by your human mind. Know that you are not your thoughts, you are not your ideas, you are not your descriptions of the world around you. You are a being of pure consciousness who has chosen to manifest on the physical plane. You have incarnated to bring out, develop, and enjoy the beauty of the created realms. And that's from Ken Carey's book, Return of the Bird Tribes. which you quote in the book, that's a very different outlook from what we're taught from birth, which is, as Connie was saying, it's the scarcity model. Life is rough. Get what enjoyment you can of it. Take care of yourself and your family. Brave the elements, even though you'll probably hate your job and your spouse after a while. Your kids will probably never fully appreciate you, and it all ends in death. But do what you can to survive. It's dreadful. And I'm wondering, are there practical things we can do that lead us out of this grind of this survival-based mentality, which you talk about in the book, in the chapter where you're talking about living in, fully feeling the present moment. Most people are taken up with bill paying and child raising, fighting traffic, working the day job, worrying about having enough money to retire, or for the moment, look at the people in California right now who even lost their vehicles as well as their home and their job. Are there steps to release ourselves from the grip of the survival mentality so we can experience this consciousness of beauty and joy that Carrie is talking about in his book?
Well, that Ken Carey quote is there for a very specific reason. It basically nails it, and the idea that the true reality within which we exist is infinitely greater, more amazing, more beautiful than we could possibly imagine. And the purpose of the book is to help the reader to get out of the stuck old paradigm, the old fear-based paradigm, the previous assumptions that continue to run the world, the current assumptions that, as expressed in the book, if you look at those 10 current assumptions, you'll see that they're pretty much still active, still the dominant mindset of humanity.
Yeah.
What we're proposing is that we examine those and consciously choose to shift, to change, to replace our old assumptions with these new and higher vibrational assumptions. That changes everything. So when you are standing there looking at the ruins of your house that just was destroyed in a fire, and your car is burned, but you've got your wife, you've got your kids, you've got your family, and all of your neighbors are standing there looking at this devastation. If you can actually summon up gratitude, how is that for a challenge? Because it's very, very easy to curse God or, to really, really get angry and upset, and that's very understandable, grieving. But if we can actually summon up the gratitude to know that however there's no way we would have chosen this, but it's leading to something potentially higher and better, and it's pretty much up to us and our state of consciousness to use this as something that kicks us out of whatever we might have been running around worrying about, paying the mortgage and getting the kids to school and those concerns that you just listed. It makes all of those things look trivial. And the reality is that we're human, we're alive, we are spirits in the material world. We are pretty much required, I hate to use that word, maybe that's not the right word, but we are advised to receive these experiences, these circumstances from the place of gratitude. These things are happening for us. They're not happening to us. If they're happening to us, I'm a victim. If it's happening for me, I'm a beneficiary. That's a completely different take. So the point, I think, is that the same circumstance can be viewed from a whole spectrum of different angles. So if I'm in victim consciousness, I look at this and, oh God, there it is again. The universe hates me, and look here, this proves it yet again. If I'm approaching it from, whoa, that's amazing, good heavens, I wasn't expecting that. Here I am, stripped of everything, and I've got a fresh start in life, and look, I'm not alone, and just open up to the loving universe to provide whatever it is I need. And that might not be material, that might be spiritual.
And how much fun has it been? That world that you just described? What's that noise? Hello?
Yes, go ahead.
Are you there?
Oh, dear.
It sounded like a tsunami.
Can you hear me all right?
Yeah.
Okay.
The sound of water.
Go ahead, yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So that world you described, so succinctly, isn't very much fun.
No.
Okay? So we're locked into it, totally locked into it by our beliefs, by the systems that have been developed in this lower frequency, and they're breaking down, and we're being thrown out of it. So this, Mother Earth is just shaking us up and, tearing us apart and tearing apart our realities and setting us free from it all. Because what else? How else are we going to do that? Nobody's going to just go and burn their own house down just to set themselves free, I mean, some people do, actually, but, ultimately, you wouldn't choose to do it.
No.
But I think it's, it's a tough thing. I was just thinking about our friend Mickey Willis, who's a filmmaker who lost his home in Ojai, and his children and his, how they've just flourished as a result, and what they've learned and grown and everything. It really is, after a while, one sees and experiences a reality that we have lost, of people showing up for each other, of, just being out there, being dependent on the loving universe and seeing how loving it is, instead of just toiling away, nose to the grindstone, getting the kids off to school, so they have a better life and they can buy Nike sneakers and be okay and looked well upon in school, because yada yada. I mean, what a rat race we've created for ourselves.
Yes.
And this is just shaking us loose and having us go inside to our own core knowing of our divinity, our reality. That's what's coming forth, is the human potential. We're getting freed from this lower bondage that we've created for ourselves, thinking it's the only game in town. Well, it's not. We're creating a new ball game, and your entities, if people just who are listening to this just want to go back and listen to the entities, that lovely communication from your higher realms, and just listen and know and take courage. If they can't from us, take it from them, and just start to trust and rely on your own intuition and your own knowing that you are loved by a conscious, loving, abundant universe, and that will become your reality.
And if we don't yet have that as the basis of how we look at the world, we're being given increasing numbers of opportunities to move into that, because some days we just are given no chance, no other choice, really. It's that or completely despair. And it's this polar opposite of not only despair, but that sort of very dull, banal life you're talking about, where people just keep buying more and hoping to feel better and put impressive shoes on their kids and hope their kids won't be teased at school, for not looking flashy enough. And, as you're speaking, I'm thinking about Lynn Twist's amazing book, The Soul of Money. And, she's just this brilliant woman who spent years as a fundraiser for the Hunger Project, and had to start looking at money in a completely different way after she and her husband did incredibly well financially, and they became these people who just, lived a particular lifestyle because they were doing so well financially. And then she began to realize she had something more to give in life, and the book just outlines exactly what you're talking about. We've got to go back to this core realization of living in love, and not only in constant expectation of keeping ourselves fulfilled materially. And, understandable, the people in California who've lost their homes are just wondering what's going to become of them. They're not thinking in material terms. They're thinking just, what are we going to do? And our hearts go out to them. This is an astounding moment, I think, for the whole country, to say we're going to rise above what we've been taught, and we're going to extend love and support to one another. We're going to demonstrate that to each other and to those who haven't got the strength to believe it in it themselves right now. And it's interesting because in your lovely film, In Search of the Future, which is available on YouTube, and I really recommend it, really lovely series of interviews with all these incredibly wise elders and mystics. And there's this fellow, Francisco Castillo, who is a Per Hepecha spokesperson in Mexico, says, why are we here? We came here looking for the light. And it was hard to discern, but I think he was saying, which means delight, joy. If there's no light, there's no joy. So if you are in joy, in the light, you are going to accept the luminosity of the higher realms, basically. This is the light we're looking for. And I thought, well, what does he mean exactly by light? Enlightenment? And later he says it's love. Don't look for anything else because it's all love. And Connie, in the film, you say your understanding of the nature of the universe is that there's only love. And you say that's all there ever has been, all there ever will be, which you said today as well. It's our lack of understanding of the nature of love that makes us see certain things as not love. The nature of that love is that it's unconditional. And what that means is that by its nature, it must give us everything we ask for, our beliefs, our assumptions, our requests to that energy of love. And so this is what drives and creates all things, and it must give us what we ask for. So if we believe in scarcity, if we believe in separation, yeah, we'll create that. We'll create war. If there's another, because there's not enough, then to have enough, we have to fight for our survival, fight with the other, to have the power to obtain what we think we need. So this is a very, really beautiful insight, because we don't hear this often enough, that the universe is set up as a giant mirror for what we say is real and what we say is true and what we expect. And I'm wondering, so many of our thoughts are so unconscious and deeply embedded. We just have these mental practices and patterns. How do we become conscious of our everyday thoughts and assumptions and beliefs about life? So we're deliberately sending out positive messages about what we expect, therefore reaping positive outer lives.
Well, we have these 7 A's, for people to check, which I read that one sentence, our awareness. What are we allowing in our awareness? What are our assumptions? What is our attitude? Where are we putting our attention? What are we aligned with? What is our action? See, action is the key to the whole thing. Are we acting out of fear, or are we acting out of trust? Are we listening to our own heart and listening to the universe in the signs, or are we acting according to expectation of others, out of fear, out of all those other things? So the action piece is so key that one can ask oneself whenever one makes a decision, am I doing this out of fear? Okay? Because fear is a lower frequency and just keeps us in that lower vibratory level. And then the last A is allow. Are we allowing the loving universe to come through? Are we just knowing that it's going to bring us more than we can fathom? Because in a higher frequency, we can't even imagine what's there.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're kind of... when you're in a lower frequency, when you're in a feeling of only the desperation of survival, it's very hard to access even the ambition or the motivation to feel that, there's something better, and I can move forward. We're kind of stuck in that emotional rut that says, I'm done, I'm fed up. I get a lot of emails from people saying, I'm working at it, I'm doing energy clearings, writing out affirmations, meditating. I still feel awful about life. And part of it, I think, is this: we're in this void that the collective we're talking about in the channeling for today. That before we can build something beautiful, there is a space between the release of the old and the start of the new. And it can be really tough to be in that void. And yet, we can at least start to move into a place where we feel better even before those outer circumstances shift. In your film, In Search of the Future, which again is, it's on YouTube, anyone can watch it, there's a Ute tribal elder, Bertha Grove, who says you create your world by your thoughts. You create your own world. Once you speak it out there, that's the way it's going to be. That's where it started. That's the way the world was created, with a thought and a word, and then everything came into action. It kind of speaks to how powerful words are. And I don't think we understand that our thoughts and our emotions and our words are commands to the universe. Do you see it that way, either of you?
Our words have incredible power. Firstly, they affirm what is going on inside our consciousness. So let's say I'm in a victim mentality, and I'm telling somebody about how tough life is and how I've been mistreated by others. Every time I tell that story that can become a tape loop, you know what I mean? You are
Absolutely.
affirming a lower vibration reality that has tremendous power to entrap us in that state of consciousness. And we're saying, well, this wonderful, beautiful, high vibrational stuff that is very, very difficult to resonate with if you're stuck in the victim mentality. On the other end of it, if we are in a higher vibration and we speak words of love and compassion and understanding and gratitude, there's a tremendous power in that. So the power of the word is amazing. I mean, the Bible begins, in the beginning was the word. Yes. That's what Grandmother Bertha was referring to. That source opened its mouth, and out comes this sound. In the beginning was the word. What was it? Was it Om? What was it? But nowadays science calls that the Big Bang. It's like this massive silent sound that occurs in an empty universe that results in everything we see today. It's an extraordinary power in what we say, and it's really important to keep a check on what happens when our lips start flapping, you know?
And yes. It's not just our words and our thoughts, but it's what we call these 7 A's of consciousness. It's actually more complex than just our words and our thoughts. So, we really feel that that's a real gift that we have for people, is these 7 A's of consciousness that are our request to the conscious, loving universe. And also the fact that the different frequencies have different laws, that this is not the only ballgame, that there's total abundance in the higher frequency. Jesus showed us that with the loaves and the fishes, Yes. All that abundance. He had 40 bushel baskets left over. I know native people who can do that, who can access that abundance through just, a never-ending pot of soup. It just keeps coming. Yes. Because we've put a limit on it with our scarcity thinking, but that's not the true nature of the universe.
So when we shift some of our assumptions to even a bit of what you're talking about in the book, suddenly we don't feel that it's too chancy, say, to donate to a fund to support the people who have had to flee their homes or totally lost their homes in these fires. Even if we think our bank balance isn't as high as we'd like, we can trust that the universe is going to give back to us, and we can send in $20 or $30, whatever, without being fearful, or maybe plenty more than that. Because our assumption is now, well, the universe being a loving place, when I call forth more abundance, it hears me and it answers, and I don't have to stress that's not going to work, quote unquote. In fact, for myself, I find that giving opens the door to receive more, which is fascinating to me. That just must be.
There you go.
That's right. Yeah.
That's your action putting you in the frequency.
Yeah.
But the point is, though, that you can't trust in the Lord and tie your camel. Doubt is the Achilles heel of the trust frequency. It takes one's frequency down. So one has to really know and trust and know what one's doing, so that those actions are not, undermined by doubt. So it's a interesting place, this transitional place. And that's why we're being forced into it by the lack of money in the bank, by losing our old systems that we've trusted, because something new is coming. The whole, even the healthcare system and all that's being challenged right now. Ultimately, we're it's not a system that's going to be caring for us. It's the abundant universe that's going to, it's a whole different ball game where disease becomes, maybe disease becomes non-existent. The disease thing is our lower frequency, So we, as we watch these things crumble and be challenged, we just know there's another reality, completely different reality that wants to be born, and it's coming through our choices, often forced upon us, to
Yes.
walk into a higher frequency. Because what we've had has not been okay. It's been the best we could do, but it's not freedom. We've been slaves to a system. Just because we have a house doesn't mean we actually have a house. It's all mortgaged to the hilt, and we have to slave to pay the mortgages. It's not freedom, in any way, shape, or form. And that's what wants to be born is true freedom. That in the indigenous ways, they know this essential freedom, not this thing we call freedom, but the freedom of the human spirit, through trust, through knowing, through connection to this consciousness of that the internet is showing us, that we're all connected, that we can influence and touch people all over the planet, with one click of the button. We're not going to even need that as we go into this higher level. Because we communicate, the indigenous peoples have communicated telepathically forever,
Yes.
Amongst themselves in tribe or whatever. But now we're global. It's a global hookup of, and even interdimensional hookup with your realms. Look at you. You communicate with these people from other realms, these entities. This is the true nature of the universe. This is what's real, and that's where we're being taken to.
That's why people call that the telepathy the internet, which I think is pretty cool.
Yeah,
because we are connecting that way. I was going to ask what's that? Sorry.
That's great. The internet. Love it.
I was going to ask, what is a trust-based reality?
That one, girl.
I was going to ask, what does a trust-based reality look like? And yet you've already answered it. And it's been really thrilling to have you both here because, we are in a state of crisis to a degree. And yet, again, we can read that as a powerful moment of opportunity if we will just come out of circumstance for a while, stop looking at what is, as they say, and open up to ideas such as in this lovely book with these 10 assumptions, which I love the word assumption. It's sort of a natural, automatic belief, something that we can start operating on instead of the old fear-based, scarcity-based model of thought. So just huge thanks. I want to say that the trust frequency, is that available on Amazon or mainly through your website, or where can people find that?
Amazon or the website, thetrustfrequency.net.
Okay.
And they can watch the film, In Search of the Future, on insearchofthefuturemovie.com. And so
you can definitely purchase it on Amazon. Just Google the Trust Frequency, you'll find it.
And you get a signed copy if you come to us on our website. But the other thing, when you said circumstance, we just have to know that circumstance loves us more than we do. Okay? Mm-hmm. We think we want to do one thing one way. Circumstance says, no, you're going to do it this way. That's the loving universe working from our higher self to take us on our journey to wholeness. That when we incarnated, we said, yes, I want to go on this journey to wholeness. So conscious loving universe, take me there. So that's what circumstance is all about. It's divine. But I know we have to go now. So thank you.
Well, thank you both. Everyone, you've been listening to authors and filmmakers Connie, Baxter, Marlowe, and Andrew Cameron Bailey. Again, The Trust Frequency is available on Amazon. In Search of the Future is a lovely film you can see on YouTube and also on movie.com. Is that right?
No, it's in search of the future movie.com.
That's okay. In search of the future movie.com.
And the trust frequency, in search of the future movie.com and the trustfrequency.net.
.net is their really lovely website. You can find them on Facebook as well, just by their names, Connie, Baxter, Marlowe, and Andrew Cameron Bailey. And you can find me at CarolineOceanaRyan.com with information on channeling sessions with the collective, their weekly channeling message to Lightworkers, their books and meditations, and the Abundance Group, where we use this whole new thinking that we've been talking about today to concentrate on how the universe is constantly backing us up to help us create joyful things in our life. So that's at CarolineOceanaRyan.com. So thank you so much. to our listeners for joining us. A huge thank you to our guests, Connie, Baxter, Marlowe, and Andrew Cameron Bailey. And we'll see you next Tuesday on The Empowered Lightworker, 12 p.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern, here on L&M Radio Network Studio B. Namaste.